Are you wondering how much does it really cost to start an ABA business? Or maybe you're just curious on how do I access capital to make my dream a reality? In this video, I will be breaking down the essential cost in starting an ABA business, as well as ways that you can access capital. Before you start, you need to figure out what are the basic costs of starting an ABA business. This is how you will determine how much funding or capital you will need. So, depending upon the state that you're in, you may also need a specific type of license or permit. There might be a professional license that is required, some type of permit that is needed for upgrades in the building or the space if you're thinking about center-based facility, or you may also need a specific type of business license. So I always recommend thinking about and doing your research on what is it that is needed in your area, because every state is different, and as you know, every state has different laws and requirements. So make sure that you are doing your due diligence to better understand what might be required from a licensing and permit standpoint in your state. If it is that you are going to start off with an office space or a clinic as a whole, you want to think about how much square footage is needed. And if it is that there is a specific amount of square footage needed, then what is the cost per square feet? Because initially your lease is going to be the biggest expense, especially if it is that you are a center-based provider. If you are a home-based provider, you may not elect into having an office space until you grow a bit. Then you may get an office space for your administration or for your team to meet up. However, when you are initially starting, an office location is probably going to be one of your biggest expenses in addition to payroll. Next, when we're thinking about the initial cost, you want to think about the furniture that you will need or the supplies that you will need in order to operate your business. So that would be approximately $10,000 to start your business, and that does not include permits or licensure or anything else that might be needed as it relates to your startup costs, just based upon the area that you live in. And also, this does not include employee costs. So now we are going to talk about some of those operational expenses. Operational expenses are the things that are needed to keep your practice running smoothly. We just talked about the last quote of $10,000, not including payroll, so let's get into it. Salary and wages are most business owners' highest expense, in addition sometimes to the lease and things of that nature as it relates to overhead costs of operating the business. Salaries would include the hiring of your staff, your admin, therapists, if there are any type of contractors that you have, or any other professionals that would be necessary to continue with the smooth running of your practice. And as I mentioned before, payroll is one of the biggest expenses for many ABA business owners and business owners in general. If you talk to a business owner, I'm pretty sure 9 times out of 10, they will say their biggest expense to operating is their payroll, and probably also, if they are operating in a brick and mortar location, the overhead expense. From an insurance standpoint, you also have to have professional liability insurance, general liability insurance, and sometimes, depending upon your state or what type of population you work with, you may have to have other sorts of insurance as well. And when you're also getting started, you need to do some marketing or even consider what will your brand be. So these are also things that will come as initial expenses when you are beginning your ABA business. And if you haven't checked out my video on how to create a business plan, I highly suggest that you check it out, because some of these things are things that are required for you to be able to know before you even embark on this journey. You should already know what some of your expenses are. You should already know what type of marketing you'll be doing or branding you'll do for your practice. So if you haven't checked out the video, please check it out below. So let's say, for example, you have a very small and modest clinic and your rent is $2,000. And let's say for your furnishing of the clinic, meaning the furniture you need, the electronics, the materials, all those things. Let's say that that is $5,000. Then you say you want to spend about $3,000 or so on marketing or creating your brand for your business. Operationally, you also will have to pay utilities such as water, gas, electric, things of that nature. If it is that you have a triple net lease, there are additional costs as it relates to what you are responsible for as a leasee in that particular facility or location. If you are finding anything I said helpful so far, please be sure to like and subscribe, and also share this video. This is a part of a series that I have kicked off for aspiring as well as existing ABA business owners. So if you know someone that is aspiring to become an ABA business owner or is already an ABA business owner, please be sure to share this video with them so they can join in on our series. So we're trying to figure out how much capital you need. It is always helpful to buffer in about 20 to 30% beyond what your original budget is, because there may be some unexpected delays that happen as it relates to income generation. There may be things that you didn't account for as you're going along. So you always want to make sure that you have enough money for a little bit of wiggle room just in case things don't go as expected, because as you might know, or as you'll get to know, as an entrepreneur, things never go as expected. You always have to have something in case of a rainy day. And in this instance, if it is that you are thinking about what your startup costs will be, you want to account for that potential rainy day or unexpected thing. So the startup costs are the initial investments to get started. We talked about that first. Then we discussed the operational costs, and that would be the day-to-day cost of sustaining and running your practice. And that buffer that I just mentioned is for any of those unforeseen circumstances that are necessary as it relates to having those additional funds so that your business doesn't totally derail. So for example, let's say that your startup cost is $50,000. Okay, your operational expenses are $120,000. So if we're putting in that 20 to 30% buffer, we would look to have $170,000 to $200,000 in total capital to ensure that you are covered. And you might be wondering, did I start off with $170,000 to $200,000? The answer is no, because I started off with a model that best served where I was. As I mentioned earlier, when you go into a facility or a center or an office space, and also when you're having employees initially, you are going to skyrocket the cost of starting your business. So keep that in mind. If you know right now you may not have it financially, or if you know that you're not going to be able to access that level of capital initially, consider what you want to do as it relates to beginning your practice. But this should be something that's already figured out when you are doing your business plan. So many entrepreneurs may start by using their own personal savings. And this is something that I did when I started. I utilized my own personal savings to get my business off the ground. Other entrepreneurs may also look into business loans, but in order for you to go down that route, you need to make sure that you have a solid business plan, which is why I've been harping business plan, business plan, business plan throughout this entire video. You also need to make sure that you have good credit and that you are willing to take on that debt. You can also look into an SBA loan, which traditionally has more favorable terms for small businesses. And sometimes those loans will have favorable interest rates as well as provide you with more time to be able to pay off that debt. Another option could be to form partnerships or seek out investors that will help you to share the financial responsibility of your practice. So an investor will provide funding in exchange for a stake in your business. So this will mean giving up some control in your business, but on the front end, it allows you to have funds without necessarily needing to have that immediate repayment. A partnership, such as going into business with another BCBA or another clinician, could be pretty helpful because one, one, you can share the initial startup costs, and also you can share the responsibilities as it relates to the clinical responsibilities or administrative responsibilities. However, say for example, you are considering the investor route. You want to make sure that you are pitching your business to someone who shares your same values as well as your same vision. This could even be a family member, another professional, or a firm that you might be interested in working with as it relates to an investor. But you want to make sure that your terms and your conditions are very clear so that on the back end there is no conflict or issues as it relates to how the business will operate with their investment. You can also look into grants. So these would be opportunities for capital that you do not have to pay back. However, grants often come with very specific criteria and they can be highly competitive. So when we're thinking about grants, these can be government grants as well as private grants, and sometimes people have elected into crowdfunding, which are accounts such as GoFundMe, which can provide small amounts of funds for you to be able to begin your practice or sustain your practice. So overall, researching grants can be a bit time consuming, but in the long term, it can be very effective and could be pretty lucrative if it is that you are able to successfully obtain a grant and you don't have to pay back the money. So the Department of Health and Human Services sometimes offers grants to mental health practices or those in healthcare that meet their criteria. There are also many other organizations that also offer grants, so I always suggest to Google to see what it is that you may meet the criteria for and highly encourage you to apply. I personally have never elected into the grant process, but I do have colleagues who have, and they have stated that the grant process has become so much easier over time and so much more accessible. Starting an ABA practice does require some careful financial planning as well as access to some level of capital, whether it is through your personal savings, loans, investors, or partnerships. Securing the right funding is crucial to the overall success of your business. If you are looking for more information on running a successful practice, be sure to check out the next video and I will see you there.